Welcome to the fourth day of React Finland. I hope everyone is excited and you will learn as much as you learned the other 3 days as well. So this session is going to be focusing more on techniques today. So you'll learn different techniques, and we have all our experts here as well. So I would quickly tell everyone to just give a quick round of introduction for them. Maybe we start with Calin.
Hello guys, I'm Calin. I'm a full stack developer. I live in Romania in a city called Brașov, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Karin. Then maybe we can move to Yuan.
Hi, I'm Juan. I'm from Spain, but based in Berlin. I'm front-end engineer working on Adevinta. And today I'm here to talk about private registries and end-to-end tasks it's a really useful tool for developers. It's a really useful tool for developers. I hope you enjoy my talk.
Maybe Mads.
Yes, thanks. So I'm Mads. I'm a principal developer advocate at Div Riots. We're making a lot of tools to improve the experience for developers and designers. I'm going to talk to you today about the zero build pipeline. So how to improve our starting dev environments. I hope you will enjoy it too. And about a fun fact, before making code, I was a makeup artist, so monster doesn't scare me anymore.
Nice. Cool. So we are going to learn a lot of techniques today. So please post your questions in the comments so that we can have it answered later. So without a further ado, I would quickly hand over to Calin for the first session, which is how to delegate your React dialogues. And this is like a very nice topic to know as well. So over to you, Calin.
Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is something very annoying I came across in recent projects I worked on. Sometimes you need a model or a dialogue to confirm that you actually want to do an action related to maybe deleting or modifying or anything else. And it's pretty annoying to see in a container component the fact that you have to add a model and also store its view state. And since this was driving me nuts, I spent some time to come up with solutions to make this easier on the eyes, let's say. So why is this pretty bad? Because in a container component, you would have to waste, let's say, around 20 lines just to define a model. Maybe ideally this would be in a component. That's what we are going to do next. But we also have to keep it state here just for delaying basically this action. And the first step we can do to encapsulate this in some way is to actually refactor this model and store it in a component, which is what I'm going to do now. We need to see when this model is open, how to close it, and to also give it the handler that executes the delete action. And if we store it here, we actually can store it as a pure component. Bear with me for a second. We can replace it here. Give it the adequate props. Okay. And the delete handler. And we're good to go. Also have an application open for this. You can see it's a simple delete button that opens a model, and when I confirm that I actually want to delete that resource, I get a toast saying that this was successful. Well, this is a huge improvement since we removed 20 lines from our container component, but we can certainly go further. We still have to track this model's view state here, which we don't want that. One thing we can do further to further encapsulate this, and so our container component doesn't know the fact that we are actually trying to ask the user to confirm that he or she actually wants to do this. We can actually use a custom button instead of using these two components. And that's what we are going to do next. We can refactor this entire thing. We will need the onClick function and all the props in case we want to style the button further there. We would move this hook into the delete button component. And these two components as well, we would store them into a fragment. And we also need to create a handler here. So we can close this model and we can execute the method that actually deletes what we want to delete. We can remove that from here. We can add the button. On the onClick prop, we can pass the delete handler we've been using all along. And this is even greater. And as you can see, nothing has changed. This is working as intended, just as before. This might seem pretty simple, and basically it is. This is where, sorry, I forgot to pass the props to the bottom. This is where most of you might have to stop because this is enough. Anything beyond this is over-engineering. But since I was so addicted with it, I came up with another solution, scrolling through articles and blogs and whatever. And since this is a lengthy one, I just saved it and called it Going Nuts, since that's what we are basically doing. Coming back to our container component, we can see that our components disappeared. And we have the delete button working just the same. As you can see, it works just as fine. What has changed then? Well, going into the delete button, we see that now we are using a use confirmation hook. And on our handler, we are waiting for a confirmation from a promise. If we go further into that hook, we can see that this hook actually uses the confirmation model context. And yes, this is where the magic, let's say, happens. We are storing the model into a context now, which is wrapping our entire application. As you can see, this is the provider, and this is our container that you could see here. And what this does basically is that it stores a promise into a ref. It's a pending promise once the button calls the ask method, and it's either resolved by confirming or it's rejected by canceling, by clicking that other button. And what this does is that it further encapsulates the model. So if let's say you have to use 10 delete buttons on the same page, you wouldn't have 10 models, just one, because you are using the same one for each button. And this is pretty much cleaner, but again, this can be called over-engineering by many of you. And that is pretty much it. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Calin. That was really a wonderful talk. In fact, I feel this is like one of the way to also make your models and dialogues accessible enough. Thank you for that talk. Let's quickly see if we have some questions. Okay, no questions. But maybe we can just discuss about it. So, what do you suggest? Should everyone just have like a custom models or dialogues built in their design systems, or do you say we should go for like third party libraries which are already available?
I think that we should start with third-party libraries, definitely, but we should adapt them based on the design of the project.
Mm-hmm.
But third-party libraries certainly have a pretty solid foundation. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel based on that.
Mm-hmm. And what are the common problems you feel developers go through when they kind of are working with models and dialogues? If they don't think in a direction where it is accessible or not.
Um, One issue I came across is that we were overusing models in a certain project instead of using different pages. And when it comes to responsiveness, that can pretty much ruin the user experience because the model would need certain spaces um, around it. And it's pretty hard to design a solid user experience based on models on mobile if there are forms on it or anything more complex than that.
Very true. Yeah, I agree. Yuan, Mads, do you have something to add to it? Like if you've been working with models or dialogues, how do you take care of it?
Yeah, I especially like the fact that you repeat that we don't need to over-engineer everything, and we going step by step and doing small things at a time is probably the best way to do things. So yeah, really great approach.
Thank you.
Yuan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I really like the way you use the promise for for resolve the answer of the button, the yes or no. Yeah, that's something I will keep in mind on my implementation. Thanks for
Calin,
that.
do you have some GitHub link that you could share across for
Uh,
maybe users
Not
who are?
yet, but I can do it at the end of the conference.
Yep, sure. Okay, then maybe if you want to give some, like, also, like a key takeaway that how and what people should keep in mind while working with dialogues or models.
Is that we shouldn't over engineer it. The last step that I've shown you is most likely called over engineering. The third step would be more than enough. Don't be afraid to explore this kind of solutions.
Thank you for such a wonderful talk. So we will move on to our next demonstration, which is by Yuan, and he would be talking about testing the integrity of your React components by publishing in a private registry. So over to you, Yuan.
Hi, folks. My name is Juan. I am a front-end engineer based in Berlin, Germany. Currently working at the Devinta, where I build classified web applications with TypeScript and React. But in my spare time, I maintain a nice open source project named Verdacio, built in Node.js, which is very useful. I would like you will see in the next slides. So the final stage of a React component is distribution. When you share the magnificent creation with your friends or teammates. For that, you need a package manager and any of your preference. Just run the command publish, and then it's ready to go. Seems pretty easy. But there are a few things you should know before publishing a package. Shipping a broken package is easy as it seems, and once you have published more than one package at the same time, it may become a bit a challenge. Once your project grows big enough, might become a mono repository, which is with relationship between packages, some private and other public, and you might end up using tools like Lerna or NX or just simply a package manager, which are quite capable for managing workspaces in the latest versions. Then things becomes complicated, and if you make a mistake in your setup, you might end up publishing a broken package or many of them in the registry. The package JSON is the central file of your package, and there are many ways to export your work. The mainly entry point is which I will extend in the next slide, and then you have the model property, which is useful for shipping ES models and still not the facto standard, and the property types, which is for exporting mainly text definitions. The property main is the entry point for a package and is mandatory. And let's observe, for example, this example for a second. So we have a component, my modules, which I want to use somewhere else. Since on my package JSON, I do have defined index.js. This is the file which I will use to export all my components. So if you see in the example, I have exporting several components under this name. In this way, this component will be actually used for other components or other projects or other bundle tool. There's another property named export, and it's brand new. I could also be using the feature, but not recommend now since it's not very supported natively in TypeScript, but it's worth knowing that it exists and you can use in the future. The package is composed for files or folders. Those files are defined by you, and the entry point is included by default, and you have two options. The files properties, which is an array, define a list of files that be included. And there is another way, which is the npm ignore, which is a file in the root, which works on the opposite way because it excludes by default. But I would recommend use only the property files always, even if the npm ignore is used for all package managers, but the files is opt-in publishing and it lives together with the package JSON file, which is much easier to see by developers. But there are errors can happen. So pitfalls, this is the most common one I usually find when I do code reviews, is the files of npm ignore are the biggest source of confusion because they might be hardly on sync with the source code. You need to do this manually. For instance, if you migrate a package from TypeScript and the structure of the package change, and then you forgot to create the rules, this might end up in a broken package. Then you have worm compilation targets. Yeah, let's imagine you are transpiling with Babel and TypeScript to S5, but accidentally someone changed the compile and then this package fails on runtime. Also, a package could be removed from the registry. This hardly happens on public registries, but it's not impossible. And either is removed before 72 hours, which is the window you have to remove the package, or for security reasons locked or something like that, or your private company, just someone remove it by mistake. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, basically this might break also your packages if you depend on dependency, which is not there anymore. Nowadays, both helps in many tasks, mainly upgraded dependencies, and it's common that your pull request is bloated with dependencies and you just merge without fear because the test passes. But what's happened if the test is not covering that line, or what happens if the error only happens in runtime? Many projects in early stage doesn't follow the semantic version, the 1.0.0 and the version of the package JSON. Rather, they follow a structure or maybe use directly Git repositories. This is unlikely, but it's also always a factor of failure to consider. So there are 100 ways to break a package. And here's where I resume the most common ones on my own experience. And helping people that use Verdaccio over the years have teach me it's really easy to break a package. End-to-end libraries do a pretty good job simulating real user scenarios, but there are not frameworks or libraries yet to end-to-end testing publishing a package, at least not standardized. So how do you ensure your React component is tested exactly when a real user will use after running npm to install on his console? You will need an extra tool to achieve real user scenarios. So how do you test the integrity of the package? But easy, just publishing a package in a private registry and then consume it from there before running end-to-end test. And Verdace is a nice library, easy to install, just a command, very lightweight, only 1 megabyte, and fast to have your own mini registry in your hands. Could be used for continuous integration, or just for hosting a private registry in your company, your personal development. It has so many phases, but let's see the one I most likely, which is end-to-end test. For that, I want to share a real-life example. For this, I selected Storybook. And the Storybook is a tool for building UI component and pages, quite trained on design system and very well known in a React community since 2018 has been using Verdaccio on their end-to-end testing and quite successfully, I can say. It has around 70 packages and they publish 54 of them. Many of them are React components, then published to npm.js, and then that you confidently use in your projects. So let's see how actually they create that confidence publishing the packages. If you're watching this talk, most likely you are front-end as me. And do we deal with pipelines constantly? Let's take a look on the Storybook pipeline for a second and let's focus on this little part. The publish steps is the one everything I want to share today starts. The publish steps does some interesting jobs, like they bootstrap the registry, which takes only 5 seconds, which is pretty fast, and with zero config, which you could use right away, just installing the package. A second step, they publish all the package to the registry. And then Verdaccio cache all these packages. Since Verdaccio is a file-based system, it's just a storage, just a folder. You just can copy to another step, just catch somewhere else. Of course, as a responsible citizen, we stop the registry. We don't want to leak resources. So looking more in detail, this step, you can see they can run Verdaccio in any port you can choose. By default is 4873. They publish all the package. They apply some optimizations because they have so many packages and they want to only publish 15 by in parallel. And they stop the registry. So let's go one more step. And here we have the whole workflow. And again, they publish. Then they have several end-to-end test parallel jobs, and all of them they run Verdaccio in parallel in different ports. So let's focus in one of them, which is the test score. It takes 30 seconds. So the first thing they do here is they bootstrap the registry with the cache. So they have all the packages already published, so they can reuse them. If you have already used a Storybook, they have a CLI, which it creates a project with all dependencies installed and all the templates, all you need for start. They do this and after bootstrap the registry and they build the project. Once the project is built, they just run the project and they run end-to-end tests over the Storybook web app. And they do this for every framework. You can see they work for Vue, Angular, React, and more. So they are using the same packages, same integrity for all the tests. So if one works in everywhere else, it's gonna work in the same way. But the Storybook does not only install its own dependencies, also serves some from external registry, Webpack, React, whatever it needed for the build the application. And how these things are coming from? Actually, Verdaccio is able to resolve every public or private dependency through a proxy feature, which is named applinks. It does by default for npm.js, but you can modify the setup and just fetch from private registry if you have some dependencies somewhere else in your company, or from the GitHub registry if you're using something from there. So let's go step by step. First, they build the project, they publish the dependencies into Verdaccio, they storage, they restore the cache, run Verdaccio again, they do a clean installation and build. From that, they run the application, and they end up running the end-to-end test. In this case, they're using Cypress IO. So today I have a small example so we can actually show you how actually this works. So you can see here, I have a small project which you can actually use by yourself. This is an example I built by myself, and it's ready to use. Just install dependencies and run this command, and you will run the end-to-end test. So if you see my master is pretty green, so all my Cypress are running pretty well. But for some reason, I did a pull request which I want to change something, and I actually updating the main dependency here. Of course, this file doesn't exist anymore, and this end up all my end-to-end tests are broken. And this is a way which actually you can see. This is an extreme example, but you can modify the example and make it fail in several ways. Let me show you some code. So first thing is the package JSON. This is the package I want to publish. Everything fine, I have my files. In this case, I'm using a build pre-publish step, which is I'm building to Babel and copy everything to build. So what I want to include is only build. I don't want to include the source because in this case, I'm just want to ship my own configuration, not the real source code. I'm using Next.js for this example, and here's how I consume the package. Just import the package and everything should be fine. The package is something simple, just JSX, some code I took from Next.js and I modified for this example. How the script actually works is something you might look by your own, but I will sum in 4 steps. First, I just initialize the registry because Verdaccio can be run also in programmatic way. It's not only by terminal. You have an API, and it's quite simple to run. Then once I run the registry in parallel, I just publish all my packages. In this case, I'm using Yarn, so I'm just fetching all the workspaces from the project and publish all the packages I actually want to publish. Third step, I build and install my application in a temporary folder because I want to a real clean installation. And then I finish with running my end-to-end test. So Verdaccio is well documented. You can actually follow the documentation if you want to learn more. It's quite simple to learn, and they have a lot of videos and articles and best practices and so on. So I would invite you to check it out. It's really interesting, the work the community has done in the last 4 years. So this is all from my side. Thanks so much. Thank you. Gracias. Danke. Quitos. And this is my social networks. You can follow me, J Developer on Twitter, Juan Picado in GitHub, or you can see you have.
Thank you so much. A wonderful talk.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me here today.
In fact, I'm going to ask you a quick question from my side. So, what was the motivation behind working on this?
Because there was only one free, and I needed one. So I decided to fix the test in that time, a few years ago. And then I got in love with Node.js, so I decided to continue learning. And since the UI was in jQuery, and also I was working on React, I just it's obviously not only me but the community helped to build UI in React, which is basically using the latest things. For the other side is because mostly the front end developers community, they deserve something for free, something they can use, and this is so also that's something that motivates me to work on this and open source.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Also, I wanted to ask, so when you said that you kind of do the end-to-end testing, also making sure that whatever you're publishing is sort of correct. What do you really test in these packages? Like, is it more behavioral testing or more like testing the logics?
Actually, it's more about integrity. What are you testing? It's something you do in the first step. If you remember the last steps, that's something depends of your application. What is important is what the origin. What are you testing? Usually, if you run the end-to-end test directly in your workspace, you have installed your packages in your local workspace. This is not the real environment the user actually we use your application, or maybe if you pack everything to some Docker, or this is not the real environment. Some dependency might be missed, some reference might be broken, and the unique way to actually know the package is correctly published, correctly consumed, is when it comes from the registry. Either it's private or public, but because when the package manager pack all the files, this go to the registry, and this is a mutable file. Will never change, and you need to be sure what you have there is correct.
Thank you. That answers my question. Also, I wanted to ask. So I saw on your slides there was Learna. So in your project, have you come across that you kind of have made the design systems as your packages, or like just want to know where you would publish, have your own package, in which scenario, what would be the project structure more look like?
I'm not sure if I understood the question, so maybe you can repeat.
Yeah, so in let's say in my company, we kind of have like a design system where we sort of have them in packages, and any design system that we got to use, we sort of do an npm install and install that particular component from the design system. So in this scenario, how would you make sure that you are kind of using this library and making sure that the integrity check is done and we are sort of good with that?
Um, I mean, I've seen few approaches about design systems. For instance, if you see Material UI, they have only one single package with all the components. There are other approaches which they publish packages per component. This is, I think, if you are using the approach of many packages, it's much easier to actually break something, especially if you are migrating to TypeScript, which is quite common nowadays. Um, if you're using a storybook for development, that's okay, but still is not, you are not testing real unless you publish the storybook to some tenant or stuff like that. But you should uh, in your pipeline just publish either in your private registry, and then just build your application and run end-to-end or whatever. If you don't have the end-to-end test, usually it's manual test, but at least you can see the application is not being broken. So you can replace end-to-end test by manual testing if you like. But yes, actually always building from published packages correctly.
Thank you. That absolutely answers my question. Do you have something to add, Mats or Calin? Some questions?
Yeah, because Verdace is a proxy for the npm registries or whatever registry you want. How complex it is to work with different teams working on different registries to keep the API consistent? Do you have any kind of working group or task force, or is it one entity that decides from the API and you have just to stick about it, or does it just not change, or I don't know?
I don't know whether I understood, but so you mean if one team can actually just access to one registry and the registry just can proxy to multiple ones? This is what you mean? Or?
It's more about how do you work with other team, or do you work with other teams or other people with other team, or do you work with other teams or other people in different projects like npm or skypack or esm, or I don't know. They are all publishing registries. Verdace is compatible with those APIs. So how do you work with them to keep the API consistent? Is there any kind of collaborative working group or something like that?
About registries, no. I mean, basically, the APIs from the registry are kind of based on the public one, and package managers stick on that more or less. And there is no working group. Maybe in the future, who knows? But right now there is only one open source, as far as I know. I mean, there are other tries to make registries, but no, there is nothing. We just talk. I mean, I talk with package managers, maintainers, which they are really accessible and friendly. And this is pretty much the communication. And if I have to access any other maintainer, they just get connected somehow.
Okay, nice, thanks.
Thank you so much for that answers. I would like to know how do you deal with private registries in this case? If there is.
Asking me, or
Yeah. I'm asking you.
how I deal with private registries. How exactly? I mean, like,
I
if
mean,
I
when sort of you said that you have a package and you sort of will publish that to the registry. What if these registry is a private one? How would you then how would we use Versilio in that case?
well, I mean, if you're using a private registry, you need to host it somewhere.
Yep.
As far as I can see, in this case for Verdace, it's simple. I mean, I'm running the Verdace build server for the project in some instance, which I just pay $4 per month. I mean, it's I know people, big companies, which are using 1,000 developers with the registry in their own instances. Yeah, I mean, the project, like you mentioned in the talk, has so many phases. You can just use for yourself, just run locally, cache your packages. If you're traveling, I've been traveling by plane, just install my packages without any problem, because catch everything in your computer. Or you have a small team or a startup, it's maybe the most popular way to have some security and some privacy in your registry. I hope this answered your question.
Yep, that sounds good. Also, how ready it is to be used on production?
Pretty ready, I can say. I mean, it's still open source, still fresh. think of trees. Yeah, what I got from companies which reached me via chat in Verdacio, I cannot say companies, but pretty big companies, I can say. Some of them might be installed in your phone, most likely.
Cool. That sounds really great. Calin, do you have something to ask or some questions?
No, I just want to appreciate how much effort has been put into this presentation and especially into this project from Juan.
Thank you so much, Calin. Very appreciated.
How long you've been working on this, Yuan?
Since my first commit was in 2017, I did not create a project. It's a fork for something else, was named Sinopia, which started in almost at the same time, even before npm.js had private packages. It was abandoned. The story is a bit long. I just took over the project in that time. I did not found the project itself. I didn't select the name, but I was the most active. So I got the ownership, and from there, community did the rest. I mean, there are a lot of people, which is great and awesome. They had great ideas, and yeah, they built everything from open source community effort.
Just a last question. Why did you select the name Versilio?
The name Verdacio.
Yep.
There is a thread in this Sinopia project which they were selecting names, and Sinopia is actually a red color in Italian, and someone just want to select something similar, so they decided to use Verdacio, and this is how actually the name was selected.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for all your answers. And yeah, I think this is really useful, especially also, when somebody is kind of building their own packages. Also, nobody makes sure that, how the integrity check is done or whether the package is coming from the right source or not. So I think this is really good. Okay, so I think moving on to our next demonstration, we would move to, have our next speaker, Mats, who would be talking about the eternal sunshine of the zero build pipeline. I'm really excited for this talk. So over to you, Mats.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi everyone. We're going to talk about the zero build pipeline and the problem that we actually face in our front-end development. So actually, the modern front-end development stack is a bit complex because we do not work with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript like 20 years ago. We have templates engines, CSS preprocessors, post-CSS, the reactive UI frameworks like React, Vue, Svelte, and so on, the packers and the bundlers. And when we're dealing with development stuff, we're working with web dev servers, and we need hot reload, hot modules reloading, and so on. So because we're working on web applications and not on websites anymore, we're working on a really complex development stack. And right now, when I'm starting a new project, it often looks like that. I'm just waiting along for installing dependencies, then trying to start the project, and just bootstrapping a new project is something really painful because I have a lot to install, a lot to configure, and each time I want to start my development, I have just to wait for almost maybe sometimes 1 minute just to have a single view that is popping in my browser. So there is a big problem with it, and we need to tackle this issue because it's 2021 and we really need a more developer-friendly environment. So the first question to me is, why do we compile website right now. In fact, it comes at first from modules. We started with the if pattern, which is an immediately invoked function in JavaScript that allow you to declare a function and immediately run it. And it is the basic pattern that we used in the past to start to sandbox some kind of variables just to preserve the global scope and isolate the variables. So from that, we started to work on a more common format and something that we could use and reuse everywhere. So it was the first implementation of modules with a common JS format. There was a war between another one, but never mind. But right now, the format evolved, and we now have ECMAScript modules, ES modules, that are ready to be used in the server with Node and Dino, but also directly from the browser. But because of those modules everywhere and those patterns, we still had to build for the web because we couldn't load everything in the browser, and the browser weren't ready to handle the different kinds of modules with the common JS format. So we started to work with kind of tools like Browserify, and we started to pack everything together just to deliver one JavaScript file to our final users, because performance matters, and we do need to serve small and optimized JavaScript to the browser. This is the first reason we're now compiling websites and compiling web apps, because we need to pack everything and to bundle everything. And on the other side, from the last years, we now have transpilers. The trend started with CoffeeScript, but right now a lot of people are working with advanced transpilers with advanced version of the JavaScript language like TypeScript. So even if it's some kind of syntactic sugar on JavaScript, it needs to be transformed to the JavaScript version at some point, because our browser and Node and also Dino at some point just understand JavaScript and are not ready to run directly some other format like TypeScript and so on. So we do need to transform, to compile once again our language and our development language to a version that is ready to be handled by our virtual machine that is finally our brother. So this is why we're compiling our website. We use modules, we use transpilers, we have new formats to support like WebAssembly, and we still need to tackle the performance issues because we're serving application directly into the browser of our end users. So we do need to be really careful about that. So the web evolved, and we still rely on really robust, really tough foundation like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because they are the only languages that our environment is ready to power. But we need high-level tools to work daily. So in 21, the web building pipeline is something that we want easier for the developers, because we do not need overly complex DevTools stack. And we're stuck with that because it evolved step by step, and along the time, the language evolved too, with no ESM modules and so on. But we're still using old and legacy tools that are inspired in the past and that are not ready to tackle the modern version of the environment. So the usual suspects actually are still the same one. We have Webpack that pack every part of your application, the JavaScript, the external assets, images and fonts and CSS and so on, and whatever you want, whatever you have to serve. And behind it, we have some bundlers that are taking all the JavaScript parts to pack them and bundle them in one file, or just splitting it in different chunks ready to be served at some point, depending on the routing of the application. We have the testing suite with Jest or something like that. We have the transpilers with advanced version of the language like TypeScript. We probably use Prettier to reformat the thing, and ESLint to check the syntax, and npm in ER to manage the dependency. We saw that just right before this run. So, and we have any kind of specific tool specific to your framework. Even you use React or Vue or Svelte or whatever kind of front-end framework that you want. So this is really complex. And the fact that we need to compile for production because of performance issues and so on should not be mandatory during the development phase. I do not need to compile my web application to develop on it. I just want to work on it and to improve my code and serve it directly and test it, but I do not need to compile it for the production. So the idea behind it is to improve the developer experience. We talked about user experience for years right now because we want to improve the UX and we want to help people to get better and consistent experience on our product. But as developers, we're users like any others, just our use cases are focused on development side and not on interaction on UI or something like that. So we want to focus right now. We do have to focus on the developer experience as well as we focused on the user experience in the past. So what we have right now, we have a standardized module version with the ECMAScript version that is ready to be handled in Node.js and in the browser directly. We want to use a superset of language like TypeScript, JSX, and so on. We want to be free from the registries, npm registries, and so on. And I don't want to grab the whole npm registry locally each time I want to work on it. I want an instant startup because I just want to work and not to wait for my application to be compiled. I want to build in HTML support to have a not reloading directly in my browser and never lose my state each time I want to test a new feature. So I just want to replace it on the fly. I need that to be extensible to stick on my specific needs, depending on my framework and so on. And I want to be focused on development. The production is another optimization, but from my developer experience, I need to be focused on development. So how to solve the bottleneck? Previously, in the past, in the last year, some people tried to focus on this problem specifically and try to find a new way to improve the developer workflow. So in the idea behind, how does it work? We will use the native ESM support from the browser directly. We do need to transform the JavaScript or compile the module. We are free to just serve an ESM module directly in the browser. So we will work on the ESM version only, and it will be served directly in my browser. I will use non-JS modules, non-ESM modules by transforming them. It means that each time I have a dependency that is not available in an ECMAScript module format, then the tool will transform it to be ready to use it in the browser in the ESM using the cache policy of the browser. So my modules will be served once and cached and invalidated each time I want to update my version. But if I work with a React interface, I do not need to recompile and reserve React each time I want to work on my application. I just need to update my modules from my logic, but not the React core itself. So I will be free to cache it in the browser and use it directly. I will do the HTML for the on-the-fly update each time I save my file, so it will be ready to be used. And I would take advantage of the HTTP and HTTP2 features directly from my browser. About the dependencies, I won't use the Node modules version, but I will be ready to load the Node modules from the Node modules from the npm registry directly, or whatever registry I want to use. They won't be bundled, so in my browser, I will serve a lot of JavaScript file, but I don't care because this is a development environment. So everything will be served from my node modules or from the registry directly by being dynamically loaded from them in their ECMAScript module version. It means that in my code, I can just do something really, really simple like that, import my module from my module name and use it directly. And this dependency will be served from the CDN or from the my node modules directory if they're available in it, and passed to my browser directly. And that's all. No need to compile, no need to bundle, no need to everything like that. So basically, behind it, how does it work? This is the schema from the Vite project. Vite is this kind of bare modules tool developed by the Vue community. And the idea is each time you start a new project with Vite, the server is directly ready, and each time you have an HTTP request, the server is analyzing the route that you are using, and from this route, it deduces the different modules that we want to use in your dependency tree, and it serves them directly. So there is some kind of dynamic import directly from the browser, and you don't have to pre-build or optimize something before running everything in your browser. Your server is ready in a near to zero instant time, and everything is ready to be used directly from the server. So the current challenger about that are there are three main projects, probably a little bit more, but the main ones are Snowpack. This is the first one. It's really lightweight, really fast. It's totally agnostic, so you can use it with any kind of project you want, from a legacy jQuery code base to something really more advanced, like a React new application. It will work. For the build part explicitly, it still uses Webpack and Parcel in the back, but for the development process, none of those tools are used directly. There is a plugin API that was created by the team, and that is specific to Snowpack. So if you want to use some kind of plugins, you have to redevelop them. This is probably not the best way to do that, but it is highly configurable. In front of them, on the other side, we have Vite. Vite is the actual leader of this trend. It's compatible with any kind of Vue, React, or Preact, or Svelte, Lit, etc. project. So it's pretty much agnostic too, even if it's developed by the Vue community. It uses ESBuild from the dev part and rollup for the build. So it's really, really fast in kind of serving your different application. It supports multi-pages, which is really nice if you want to use it in the back to power a complex application with different entry points, like generating a static site, for example. It also works in this case. There is a kind of library mode, so you can use it still to develop a library and not only a front-end project. So you can use it to work, dev, and publish your private or open source library and use it in this context. It has CSS code splitting API, which is really fun, and the plugin API is a standard one, which is really nice because you can reuse any kind of rollup plugin already available in the past. And the third challenger is WMR. This is a tiny project. It uses a native import directly from NPM. It's feasible with the two others, but its built-in is in WMR. There is a GSS debug in the browser with native CSS modules, which is pretty fun. An HTML for static assets too. There is still rollup used in the build, and it's a HTTP2 for the development process directly. So those three ones are really, really nice. At Div Riots, where we are working, we are using Vite as a backend service. This is one of our tool, Backlight. That is a tool that is dedicated to work on design system. I will talk about it later tomorrow with another in another talk about how to use design systems. But in this application, we are working on some kind of ready to be used and a preview, live preview system. And any live preview in this application is powered directly with Vite. Each time you modify your different Markdown file or HTML file or JSX file or TypeScript or whatever you want, it's part of your source code. The preview is directly updated, and it's updated directly from Vite in a web worker, so in your browser directly. And this is really, really fast. Before that, we were working with another implementation. The rendering was done with Webpack and not using Vite directly. And this is our feedback about it. On the pros, it's really blazingly fast. We've got the native HTML, which really help to have a really quick and really fast rendering process. The preview is really quick, even on large code basis, because thanks to the HTML support, we just update the small part in your application, and we are ready to use MDView to embed components in our different version of the pages. So it's really nice. On the cons, it's a bit more error prone on code analysis, which means we can load a page and finally find missing dependencies, and this way we do need to reload the entire application because we missed dependency on the first code analysis phase. So it's more error prone. We do not have a native MDX support, which is a bit missing, but we still have MDView, but it's not standard. So we need to tackle a bit about it, and we do need a dedicated worker on this part. So because right now we have the preview that is working, that is calling a service worker, that is calling a Vite worker, and so on. So it's a step more in the rendering process, but it's definitely the good way to do it from our point of view. So it's really exciting because it's a new generation of dev tools. It's probably a new war, but led by great communities like Skypack, Vue, React, and so on. So this is really nice to see that and to have a trend dedicated to developers and the developer experience. It led to the ESM-oriented registries, which means that along the NPM registry, we now have Skypack and ESMSH and GSPM and NPKG and so on, that are registries that are serving directly the optimized ESM version of packages, which is really nice and really fun. And Dino is also pushing in this direction. And in fact, it's really easy to plug it in your existing project. If you want to do it with Vite, it's really easy to do it. You just have to stick on your existing imports that are working with the ESM modules. You have probably some kind of few adjustments to do on the edges, just to resolve some paths or something like that. Just have to update your npm script and adding a Vite config file and remove Webpack. We did it on a project called Cresus, which is a banking open source application, and we moved from Webpack to Vite. And this is the link to the pair is in the slide. I will pass it to you. So the pair is a bit huge, but just because we are just removing the Webpack config file, and this is the most important part of the PR, and that's all. Everything is working out of the box, and this is really impressive and really fast right now. So thank you very much. I'm Mads, working at DevRiot, and I'm free for your question if you have.
Thank you, Mads. That was a wonderful talk. Let's see if we have some questions. Okay. I have some questions for you. So, what would you say if somebody is, if somebody is already comfortable as a developer working with Webpack or Rollup? What do you think is a learning curve of, moving to Wheat, for example?
The learning curve is pretty smooth because Vite is coming with everything pre-configured and pre-built for you. So in the case of the Cresus application, we just had to add a small rollup plugin to handle the sprites, which was basically the same one we used with Webpack before. So so it was really simple, just a single import in the Vite config file, and that's all. Everything is working out of the box. So so there is no really learning curve about it. The most important part is just to have a look at the different kind of plugins that you will probably want. But if you are comfortable with Webpack or Rollup, this is the same plugin. So you won't be lost in your implementation.
Cool. So one quick question also. You mentioned Dino Js is kind of already sort of using Wheat in their like how did you? I remember you mentioned something about Dino.
Yeah, exactly. Dino is an awesome project. For people that are not aware about it, it's the new project by the same creators of Node, but they are working on new implementation that is what Node was supposed to be in the past, with security concerns and isolation concerns and so on. So Dino right now is ready to power directly TypeScript files on the server part, and is directly using the ESM format for the modules, and are ready to use them directly from different registries, different CDN, and so on. So you don't have to install your dependency locally. You just have to check out your code base and just run the Dino file, and it will grab every part of your every dependency of your application and run it directly. So this is a really cool and really impressive project, probably the future of Node or something like that, I guess so. In this context, the interesting thing is that this is the same trend that the bare module trend on the front end. We just don't want to transform the files and to have this responsibility on the developer's shoulders. This is a tool's responsibility and not the developer's one. So as a developer, I just want to focus on my code and find the right dependency to do what I want to do, and just have to load it in my final code, which could be on the server with Dino or in the front end with my my bare module tool like Vite, and everything should be working.
Cool. Thanks for that answer. I think Jon had a question.
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned you show example of a bank. You made a migration, and I was wondering if a company big enough, you have a big project, how could you quantify the migration from a complex Webpack and backend stuff to something like Bit? It's how hard might be, just roughly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. On the Cresus project, which is open source, there is something like maybe 10 or 12 contributors. So this is a small open source project, but the PR was led by just one person, and it took just one evening, one night to do it, and that's all, just few hours, because mainly it was just adjusting some paths on the assets, because we moved the assets on another folder in the structure, and remove the Webpack configuration, add a Vite configuration, which is basically the default Vite configuration. So it didn't took that much time, and it's a complex project, because the legacy code is something like 6 years or something like that. So it's I guess a pretty big one project. So on large code base or enterprise code bases, maybe it could take the same amount of time, something like few hours, I guess, something like that. But it's not that complex to implement and to have it in production.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. Does it also support code splitting and hot module reloading out of the box? Like,
Yeah,
Webpack? Okay.
yeah, definitely. There is on the development side, there is a native code splitting and hot module reloading built in the project. So so you don't have to do anything on your side to have it. And on the production build, it's pretty much easy to configure some split point to load chunk of code depending on the routing parts, like we did before with Webpack. So yeah, it's ready to be handled directly in the product.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, just a quick question also. What do you think about that? It still only supports like ES modules in production build. So, do you think it's a drawback, or how would you take this?
Yeah, it's complex, because we still have legacy codes in the CommonJS format, and probably won't be updated at some point or something like that. So so we do need to stick with them and to have them continuously working. I have a friend of me that is often saying that we're the only industry that is supporting in the retro compatibility 30 years of legacy code. So so that's right. The web browser is still working on legacy web code and legacy websites. So the SM format is definitely the future, and that's really fun. But we still need to handle the CommonJS format and to be ready to tackle them. But I'm pretty sure that initiatives like the Skypack or ESMSH registries that are transforming CommonJS format to the ESM format and set them directly from the registry is probably the best way to handle them in the future. So yeah, we will have to live with this kind of legacy code, and we won't try them at some point. But our tools need to do that for us, and we don't have to focus on that anymore.
Quick question, maybe the last one, since I'm now very much interested in Vite. What do you think about the bundle size? Is it like compared to Webpack and Rollup? So is it like a major difference, or how do you see it?
Yeah, about Vite, it is using, for the bundling part on production, it is using ES-build on the development process, but still using rollup on the build phase. So for the build, this is still rollup on the back end. So the size of the bundle is almost the same, because it's the same tool that is bundling the different assets. But they are looking to use ES-build for the build process too. Currently, this is there is still some kind of errors on the building phase with ES-build. So they are kind of a bit not ready and not comfortable to use it in production just right now, but in the near future, I'm pretty much sure about it. And ES Build is really awesome in terms of optimization and shrinking the module size. So yeah, this is the same thing as with Webpack or Rollup, and it will be even more optimized in the future.
Thank you for that. So we've got some more questions. Maybe we'll take one from Jon, and then we have some questions on the YouTube, which I'll read later. Maybe Jon, you can go first.
Okay. I don't know what did you mention on your presentation. What about server rendering and React? It's possible to have some sort of auto loading, or either the Beat or Snowpack support this out of the box.
About the server-side rendering, you mean something like that?
Yeah.
I did not test on this part specifically, but on Backlight, the implementation we're using is isolated in a web worker, which is similar that something you will have on the server with a Node.js version. So I guess, but I have to check it. I guess that the server-side rendering is pretty much handled with those kind of tools too. So yeah, it's really nice. At least I'm working for the static assets right now. I'm working with VitPress, which is a tool that is generating static content using Vit in the backend, and it supports SSL rendering because this is exactly what it does. It just generates static HTML assets at the end. So yes, it's nicely handled and really fast.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have a quick question. Is it easy to begin or like easy to debug as a developer?
Yeah, easy to begin, of course. Just plug a vit config.js file, took from the documentation the basic version, and run npx vit, and that's all, and you will have something ready to be used. So this will be really quick. It's really easy with I would say a really small learning curve, and easy to debug. Yes, because the debugging message in the console are really useful and really clear. So it's really easy to understand what is missing or not exactly using. You have a lot of feedback from the tool, so it's really really simple.
Okay, we have one more. Webpack is such a pain, but it's too popular to be replaced. How can we convince the architects to use Vite than Webpack?
Yeah, definitely. This is a complex question. I guess the demo is probably the best way to do that. Just make simple PR to replace the Webpack config file with a Vite config file and say them, okay, check the PR and just run Vite, and you will see the difference. And everything will working the same way because this is still the same plugin API on the back and something like that. I'm pretty much confident that every team will move to this kind of tools, not Vite only, but probably also Snowpack or WMR or something like that. But yeah, definitely when the developers and the architects will see the difference in terms of just productivity and just being focused on the business code and not having something working and debugging Webpack and so on, they all will be convinced about the advantage of this application.
Thank you for that, Mats. That was a really insightful talk. But now I would want everyone to just share a quick takeaway from their talk, like what they want to give as a takeaway to the audience. Maybe we start with Mats.
Okay, so from my side, I will say from this overall session, don't reinvent the wheel. Go to the things step by step. and focus on your development and not of your dev tools. We have people working at dev tools. That is really fun, but developing tools and developing your apps are two different things, and you do not have to handle both of them. Just stay focused on your development, and that's all.
Thank you. That's really nice suggestion. Then maybe we go to Jon.
Take away, yeah. When we create tools, we should don't overwhelm the beginners with a lot of tools learning. Just let them to focus on the important, on learning the foundation of the language, and then the tools should be easy for them, so they don't spend big part of the time just learning how to learn. that's my takeaway.
Thank you, Jon. Calin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think a takeaway would be that we should try to reduce the distractions we encounter daily as developers, because that lets us focus on what we have to do and the problems we have to solve. And if our tools are faster and we realize sometimes that we should not over-engineer some things, that's pretty helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the insights that I learned a lot today. So I'm sure the audience as well learned a lot. And thank you so much for all the insights, all the wonderful talks that you gave. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Mads. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.